I mean, I was shrugging my shoulders at what Mikel Arteta was saying about they should be 3 or 4-0 up, but they weren't. If they were 3-4-0 up, this might have been a moderately academic scenario because the game would have been out of sight. But yeah, the difficulty is you can hear, and I can hear, pros sitting across the room saying, football referees don't understand what goes through a player's mind. So then how are they ever going to be able to determine intent? Because intent is only occupied in the mind of the perpetrator, right? So you've got to look at it and say, well, how do you determine intent? In instances like this, where it's not about intent, there wasn't any intent because it was an accident. If he touched him, it was clearly unintentional. You don't have to get into intent. You'd have to be blind pew to determine that had any intent behind it. So you look at it and say, this is a situation where the law is an ass because you've got a double jeopardy or double whammy.
Yeah.
The consequence for an unintentional situation like this should be solely the penalty. That is the punitive effect of the punishment, right? When you send somebody off for an unintentional event, then you're starting to look at the ridiculous nature of how this law operates. The challenge I've got, and we've put this sort of circumstance through the prism in 2 other areas, Jim. One, the offside rule, and the other, the handball rule. And the challenge I have is what is worse, allowing a very poor law to stay in place and not changing it, or changing the dynamics of how a season looks with people getting the benefit of it operating one way for half a season and the benefit of it operating another way for the other half of the season. And I'm kind of in the camp, irrespective of whether the law is an ass, of saying if you start the season with a set of rules and set of laws, then you have to stay with them and continue, even though some of these laws are challenging the whole fabric of football. An unintentional foul, in my view, should not result, a clear unintentional, not one where you're debating about the subjectivity of whether it was intent or not.
Right.
Everyone can see that was unintentional.
So it shouldn't lead to a red card?
Well, by the law it said, yes, it should. But by the real spirit of what the game should embody, of course it shouldn't.
No. I mean, Rio Ferdinand, Glenn Hoddle, we're calling it ridiculous. Yep. The penalty itself is enough of a punishment, isn't it?
That's the point.
That's the point. The red card aspect of it makes it an unfair double whammy, but it's the law.
But these things are not small points, right? It must be very clear to people, certainly in the game, that an unintentional foul in the penalty box results in people being sent off. That's a clear rule. It's not buried in the small print, right? It'll be amongst the big rules that football players and football managers have to contend with. Why aren't people at the beginning of the season saying, have you seen this bloody rule? We've got to play this season. If one of our players unintentionally creates a situation in the penalty box, not only are we going to get a penalty, we're going to get our player sent off. That's a ridiculous rule. But you don't hear it, because there's not enough study or professionalism around how the game shapes up before these circumstances manifest themselves. And what we get to do, which is great for us, is sit there looking at this going, this is newsworthy, this creates a situation, this is ludicrous. What it does is it makes the PGMOL, it makes IFAB look like village idiots, because not only have we got a VAR which isn't being deployed properly, which was a tool to supposedly help them, we've got rules that, diminish the integrity of the game. This is not Willie Young pulling down Paul Allen in the 1980 Cup final, where everybody thought that's GBH. This is an unintentional situation where players come across another player.
You make a great point, Simon. They've had a long time to look at this, people in the game, players, managers, the PGMOL. The last time the double jeopardy law, if you like, was changed was in 2016. They've had 5 years to do something about it.
Yep.
And yet they don't. So if the rule needs to be changed, again, with intent included, would that not muddy the waters even more and lead to more inconsistency?
Well, we go back to the argument, don't we, and the debate, which is a very difficult debate to have, because, as I've just said, sit here and we can get old misery guts Danny Murphy sitting across us, right, and suggest to him about a referee understanding the player's thinking, and the first thing Dan will say is, these referees don't understand what players do. They don't know what it looks like. They've never played the game. So now ask a referee to understand intent. Because how can he? He can't manifest he'll have to say, it looks like it, so I think subjectively. Then you're in the territory of subjectivity. Then you're in the territory of inconsistency. Because Andre Marino will look at it one way. Mike Dean will look at it another way. Whoever else we're talking about will look at it in a different way, because when you get into subjectivity, rules aren't supposed to be subjective, or laws. They're supposed to be definite. And we know with respect, and I say it again, that these referees are a little bit cowardly about making decisions, and the last thing they want is subjectivity, because they're going to get even more of a mullering when we decide that their subjectivity was wrong.